And all of a sudden, I felt the depression start to lift. Now that was way back, way back in the 70s. Today, research confirms that I was brilliant in my treatment of myself. No, not really. Okay, so here's what research says. From New Life Ministries, this is Going Deeper with Stephen Arterburn. I'm Stephen Arterburn. And Going Deeper is all about taking the tough issues, the hard issues of life, looking a little bit deeper inside so that we can gain some insight into our lives. Hi there, Steve Arterburn here, and thanks for joining me for Going Deeper. If you want a restoration Bible, you can just email me at stevesocial@newlife.com. If you need help, you can call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. But right now, I'm talking, this is kind of part B of the last episode, where I talked about medication. And I talked about how ridiculous it is for people that don't know any better to say that all medication, especially psychotropic medication that could literally help a psychotic person function pretty normally, how ridiculous it is for them to declare that all of that is evil or against God, or that people prescribing it are confused or stupid or evil or something like that. Having said all that, if a person is depressed, such as, let's say you, and you're taking antidepressant medication, there is something you must do. Have to do it. Got to figure out a way to do it. And I'll tell you a story about myself to illustrate the one point that I'm going to make here in Going Deeper. So you could call this Going Deeper on one point about depression. When I was going to seminary in Fort Worth, Texas, I went through one summer what you would have to call a bout of deep depression. Now, this was in graduate school. I was already on antidepressant medication when I was a freshman in college. So I sunk down into depression this summer at seminary. Horrible time. I remember even thinking about maybe I would end my life. So glad I didn't, but it was very painful. A lot of things that I had never grieved and gotten over, and just the fact that depression kind of runs in my family, having a grandfather that committed suicide, and my mother discovering him and then thinking that she was responsible for that suicide, because when he said he wanted to divorce her mom, my grandmother, my mom said, no, don't do it, and then he took his life. Now that really sets up a guy like me for depression. This summer, I sunk into this depression, black, dark, and I had a goal to get out of bed by noon. And somehow I knew, maybe it's because of what I'd been studying at seminary or whatever, maybe it was the Holy Spirit giving me some insight, I knew this: if I could get my body moving, my mind just might catch up with it. I had a putter and a 5-iron. There was a golf course down by the Trinity River Dam, and that's where golf was really cheap. I would try to get out of bed by noon, and I would try to be out there on that golf course with just my two little sticks there, hitting a ball down the course by myself, but I was walking, and I was swinging, and I was breathing fresh air, and I wasn't in the house, and it was light out there. I was sweating. I was drinking water. I was noticing little squirrels. Now with ADD, of course, squirrel. I mean, I do that stuff. But there were really squirrels out there playing, rabbits hopping. And it was about 2 weeks of this, and all of a sudden, I felt the depression start to lift. Now that was way back, way back in the 70s. Today, research confirms that I was brilliant in my treatment of myself. No, not really. Okay, so here's what research says. That many times, for many people, exercise can be as effective as an antidepressant. And if you exercise, maybe you wouldn't need the antidepressant. Now, here's a really interesting little thing. Sometimes you cannot get yourself out of bed to go exercise if you don't have antidepressant medication. So, I recommend that if you have chronic depression, deep depression, whatever, going through a bout of just an episodic depression because you lost something or is a bad time, whatever, that you would do both. That you would find the best medication to help you in fighting depression, and that you would commit to every day getting the body moving. Now, one of the great things that I did was to get out on a golf course and go 9 holes, and that required me to walk a very long way. But maybe you don't have the luxury of doing that or the time, and I would just say this. If you have 10 minutes a day, and everybody does, you should use that 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes, to exercise. When you do that, when you exercise and get the body moving for 10 minutes, it really does kind of change the brain chemistry even, but 10 minutes pretty soon becomes 15, 15 becomes 20. So, if you have somebody in your life that is depressed, it would be a really crummy thing to tell them that there's something spiritually wrong with them and there's nothing going to get better until they deal with that spiritual thing that needs to be fixed. Well, that'd be horrible. But what you could say is, I think you ought to get a checkup. I think you ought to have a psychiatrist take a look and talk to you. And secondly, I think you ought to start to exercise, and I'll be here tomorrow to help you get out of bed so we can exercise together. That would be helpful. Worst thing to do is abandon a person who's depressed because it kind of makes you uncomfortable to be around them. Don't do that. All right. See you next time. We'll talk more about some things not to do if you know somebody that is really struggling with depression. Steve Arterburn here, and thanks for joining me. And you could give us a call if you need some help at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Thank you for joining me for Going Deeper. I hope something I've said may have helped just a little bit. If you have a question you'd like me to answer or comment, just email me at stevesocial@newlife.com. I'll see you next time.
If you want to support Going Deeper with Stephen Arterburn, be sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. And if you know someone who would benefit from this episode, be sure to share it with them. See you on the next Going Deeper with Stephen Arterburn from New Life Ministries.